she says goes. Like everything goes around her, and both cultures are very like machista, very macho.
Mm-hmm.
The very similar cultures actually in food and the way that very similar. And obviously very both Caribbean. I wouldn't say one. I would even say sometimes that Dominican culture could be more macho than Cuban. Even though my family is a little bit the opposite. My Dominican side, like we pamper. They pamper the men a lot. Like I was very pampered as a man, but not necessarily like men are like we're greater than women. Nothing like that.
Yeah.
But the roles were very like okay, women are usually cook, men usually work. Like it was more like that. But definitely Dominican side, my grandma, Amantina, she holds the reins, whereas my father's side, my Cuban side, my grandfather kind of holds the reins, lays down the law.
Is that common for the grandmother to be kind of in charge on the Dominican side, or because you say it's like more of a macho
I feel
culture?
like it's not as common actually. No, I feel like it's not as
Usually
common.
it would be more of the
Yeah.
grandfather or father.
Mhm.
Would you say?
Yeah, I feel like my Dominican side of the family, like the women in it, are just very independent, very solidified. Whereas in my Cuban side of the family, it's not as much like that. Like they are, but not as much, and that's kind of why. And also my grandmother my Cuban side of the family, like my grandfather is with my grandmother. They're together and they're living and everything. Whereas my grandmother, my Dominican side of the family, she her husband passed away a long time ago. So it's only her, and even when he was around, she was still the one that laid on the law. But it's like
She just kind of had to step up as the matriarch.
even more so, yeah.
Yeah.
And kind of your mom too when they got divorced. So do you think that they
Yeah.
kind of became flipped because of their circumstances rather than what was more traditionally expected?
Exactly. Yeah, my mom definitely played the role of like father and mother when you're
Yeah.
in the United States, and it was more difficult for her too because she was alone over here. Like it was only her. Like we didn't have a lot of family. It was basically like only person she could depend on was like my father's side of the family. But then when they divorced, like they didn't really get along, so it was kind of just her, myself, and my older brother who was 2 years older than me.
So it kind of forced her to be independent, kind of take on that role.
Very much so. And my family always joked because she was like always a baby of the family, but then like she has to grow up really, really fast.
Yeah.
She did so. She definitely did.
You said that you had similarities between like culture and food. How's like the language play a part in that too, from your Dominican and Cuban side?
Similar, but Dominicans, each one has a little bit different. Cubans aren't as predominantly like, oh, like that's exactly what they do. They have like more just like a tone, whereas Dominicans speak very like almost can be broken Spanish. Like my family actually speaks pretty proper for Spanish, but like it's very broken. Like even when I speak, you could tell I'm Dominican. Like I speak more in Dominican way because I leave out my s's. I cut off the end of words. Like I speak it very fast. It's almost like, in a way, it's almost like Jamaican broken English, but not to that extent. Not as bad. It's like still like very much understandable by any Hispanic culture.
So did you grow up speaking English and Spanish, like as a child?
Yes, I think that I learned Spanish first actually.
Yeah.
Because my mother, my whole family, both sides, I speak to all of them in Spanish, and I'm glad because that's why I know Spanish.
Even to today.
Even today. Besides my brothers, I have two brothers. So I have one brother, Oscar, who is on who is my mother. My mother had two children, two sons, Oscar and myself, Gabriel. But my half brother Jerry on my Cuban side, he's like 36 now, so he's a lot older than me. But he, what was the point? I forgot what the point I was hitting.
Language. The
Oh
language.
yeah, the language. Oh yeah, I speak to both of them in English. That's what it was. I speak to both of them in English.
Because is it because the Spanish is not the same? Like you
It's
don't
just
speak
like,
it the same way. That
feel
it's
we just got
easier to
used
just
to
go
that.
English.
we just got like this
Yeah.
is very customary. We speak it in English. You know, we speak in English.
If you were to get married and have children, would you continue to bring Spanish into your household? Would you teach them Spanish and have them speak Spanish?
My kids are gonna know Spanish. Like, no matter what. Again, if they don't, I'm sending them to Dominican Republic for a couple months or something. Like they're gonna know Spanish.
How about religion? Is religion a big part of your culture, and do you still practice it? And would you pass that on as well with your family?
Absolutely, religion is huge. Myself, I haven't been as religious as I could be. In the beginning of college, I was. I've gone to Catholic school my whole life. I've been blessed to be able to go to Catholic school my whole life. But yeah, like my grandmother, Amantina, my Dominican side, she is very religious. She prays all day. She's always praying. Every paragraph or every sentence she utters has to do with God in it or something religious. That's how she is. And on my other side, my grandfather, he's not as religious, but his wife, my grandmother, on that side, on my Cuban side, she's also religious. She goes to church every Sunday, like without fail. So yeah, it's very religious. They very much of a factor in everything we do, in our values and culture and everything. What's right and wrong, you know.
Which religion do you identify with?
Catholic.
Catholic.
Catholic. Yeah. Christian Catholic. Both sides.
Did you grow up in a primarily like Dominican neighborhood? Like, I'm not sure where you grew up or where you lived, but what's it?
So I moved a few times in my life. So the place I primarily grew up in was in Lynn since second grade. So that was like 9.
Uh-huh.
And Lynn is there's a lot of Dominicans in Lynn. It's
Okay.
it's a very diverse city. It's not mostly Dominican, but there's a lot of Dominicans.
Okay.
A
That
very
Mass?
big Lynn, Mass. Yeah, it's a very big Dominican population. It's also a big Asian population, big Black population, and white as well. Obviously, still the majority culture, but it's very diverse. Kind of like almost like Providence in a way. Almost like Providence. Very diverse city. What was the question?
I was just asking if you'd
Oh
grown
yeah.
up in
Oh
like,
yeah. So
primarily Dominican.
my neighborhood, no, in Lynn, my first neighborhood, it wasn't mostly Dominican. It was probably just like it was pretty diverse. We grew up in like we spent like 3 or 4 couple years in it was like a rented apartment, but it wasn't. It was still like a more of a nice neighborhood, a nice area. And then the next one we lived in a really nice neighborhood where it was like I remember my mother's really smart financially and economically, so she got the smallest house, like tiny house, in like a really nice neighborhood. Because Lynn doesn't have like that many nice neighborhoods. Like not that many. And like now the house is like pretty big because she made so many decisions to it. But she's always been like, that's where I learned from. She's so smart, so meticulous, and so like she knows exactly what she's doing. She's always making investments even when we're like in the dirt. Like she was always making smart financial moves, and that's why like I like to this day, like I look at my house now, I'm like, wow, like, we live in such a nice neighborhood and like a nice house, you know.
Have you ever experienced any type of like racism towards like your culture or anything like that growing up, or has seen like or witnessed your family experiencing racism? Or?
Oh yeah, I mean all the time. I mean racism it's a part of my life every day. To be honest, it's something that I mean the overt racism, it doesn't happen a lot. It's happened to me, but it doesn't happen a lot. But I feel like racism, any person that is a person of color can kind of vouch for me that the way people interact with you, treat you, it's not like with malice. It's that like subconsciously people treat you differently. Especially like even being in Providence College, like I see every day because most students that go to Providence College aren't used to having interactions with minorities. So then when there's like that unspoken of barrier that people have.
People act like they're guarded a little bit around.
Yeah,
you, like
yeah.
they're hesitant at first.
Yeah, in every way. It's like even I mean I feel like every culture you kind of drift towards what's more like you. Like you drift towards people that look like you. You drift to people that have the same culture, have the same interests. So it's every culture, but I think it's a little worse. It's kind of a little worse when it comes to when you're doing it to minorities, but because of all the history that's happened. Whereas if like minorities doing it to white people, it's not as bad because there's no history. There's not many negative stereotypes towards white people. You know.
Right.
So that's the difference. You know. But like definitely every day. I mean, the most recent one was I went to over Thanksgiving break. 3 of my friends, so it's four of us. We went to Sonic in Peabody, Mass, and we were just there. And then this three parking spots away, there was this car, this big white truck, and then they had like yelled something out to when I went to the bathroom. I came back, they were yelling something out to my girlfriend who was in the driver's seat, and it was just kind of just like, oh, like let me take you on a date, this and that, like kind of like a derogatory way of kind of just like catcalling her, you know. And then like I kind of just stood between both cars, and it's like what, like whatever. So they when they saw me, they shut the window, put the window up, exactly, put the window up. So I get back in the car, whatever, and then we kind of talked about it, but it kind of just died down. But I was a little mad about it, right? Then 5 minutes later, they go in front of both cars and they block our cars and they put the windows down and they start yelling out like racial slurs and homophobic slurs to us and saying they want. And this is like, granted, this happened a week after Donald Trump got elected, actually. But started yelling. I was scared for my life. Like I was scared for my life. I was scared for my girlfriend's life. I was scared for my friend's life. We happened to all 4 of us be people of color, and it was really scary. And that happened. Like things like that happen all the time back then. It doesn't happen as much, but it's still very prevalent. And because slavery just happened so very short time ago, you know, it just happened, you know, and things like that. I mean, just women didn't have rights like 50, 60 years ago. Same thing with that, you know. So all the time I experienced that.